Hannah Ruhama, the Kombucha Mama, mother to mazillions of bacteria around the globe. You might be brewing them in your kitchen right now. And I'm super excited to have a special guest here today, Mary Ellen O'Brien. I'm going to let her share a little bit more about the work she does, but she helps you align with your soul's purpose. And the times we're living in right now, it can feel really confusing. What am I here on planet Earth to do? How can I serve the collective? How can I serve myself and my family? And I think we're all sort of being called into service in different ways. And so what I love about this work is it gives you a chance to explore and uncover who you are and where you're at with all of that. And it really harmonizes with the 30-day kombucha challenge. And in fact, Mary Ellen has some great resources that we're sharing in the 30-day kombucha challenge as well. So I'm really excited to introduce you all to Mary Ellen O'Brien. Welcome, Mary Ellen.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. And it's exciting. And I'll tell you just a little bit about what I do and how I got into it, and then we can go from there. So I really noticed years ago, 20 years ago, that I just didn't feel like myself. I was overwhelmed, stressed. I was a little irritable, and I was unfulfilled and frustrated in my career and where I lived and everything. And I just really needed to reconnect. I felt like I lost touch with my true essence. And then I would have these glimpses of this amazing connection on vacation or doing a workshop, and there was nothing better. And then I decided that I could practice strengthening that muscle myself to raise my set point. And I was able to do that. And now I've been doing this for 20 years, helping other people do this. And it's so exciting because it is about hearing your inner voice, your inner guidance, experiencing your full energy, and having that centeredness so that you can easily make decisions and prioritize what matters to you. I think especially now we're so inundated with so much external noise and so much busyness, and there's just too many other voices and things to focus on. So I see it as a radio station. If we have 100 radio stations, there are these really loud stations that are all competing with each other. It's other people in our lives or external information. And it's really subtle, but there's this one station that it's our inner voice. And when we do the work and commit to fine tuning and finding that station and then amplifying the volume, everything changes. So that's what I wanted to help everyone with today, really talking about that in particular.
Well, and I couldn't agree more. I'm someone who I call it kombucha kismet because I had no idea that I would become the kombucha mama as a result of this chance meeting back in 2003. And yet there was something inside of me that impelled me forward. And I did a little bit of this type of work. My inspiration to start Kombucha Kamp was by taking an Artist Way workshop. And for folks who aren't familiar, it's this great 12-week program. And part of what you do is start to really listen in and tune in through a variety of different exercises. And that's what came to the surface, was that I had to teach people about kombucha, and that's when Kombucha Kamp was born. And so I've been someone who has listened to that inner voice. Not always. We all have those other voices of doubt, of trauma, of the world, the pressure of everything telling you don't listen to your true self, don't be your true self. It might be too scary for other people. It might be overwhelming for others. You might jeopardize somebody else's belief system about who you are when you start to step into that true voice of yours. I just feel really fortunate that for the most part, I've been able to embody that. And so what are some of the tools? What are some of the ways that people can start to really tune into their soul purpose?
Yeah, so, and I'm so glad you said that, because I definitely know it's a muscle we can strengthen and that we can find that station. And when we're not connected, it feels very uncomfortable. So it's kind of an easy guidance to bring us back to getting that connection. And I do think that we're not going to be 100% of the time there, but because it's a muscle we can strengthen, we can be there so much more consistently. And so I wanted to say that when you find it, first, it's important to be able to find it and experience it, and then you can get there more often. So with my clients, I'm helping them know what their true center is, their lane, and what lights them up and what charges their battery, so that they can decide with their work or relationships or where they live or their health, what is in their lane and what's not in their lane. It really simplifies everything. So one really great tip that I've noticed, and it begins the process of this muscle we're talking about, is to come up with a list of 10 activities that do really charge your spirit and charge your battery. And I know that when you come up with them, it's nice to come up with a variety of different activities. So some will be physical movement, some will be more inward, some will be with people, and some will be just alone, introspective. You could be reading and learning. There's creative expression, there's nature. So I think we lose touch with our true essence because we get so immersed in the external. So just getting it back to the basics and what lights us up. Sometimes my clients are surprised. They don't think about it. They know that they've lost touch with their true self, but they don't quite know who that is. And when we start building the muscle and get them back into, some people realize that they love innovating, or they love taking a drive, or they love dangerous, just rebellious things or cutting edge ideas, or everybody's different and everyone has different activities. So that's one way to begin, by coming up with a list of 10, but then narrowing it down to 3 that you can carve out time this week to do, because we want to make sure that it gets in your bones and in activity so that you can begin to notice the difference. So if you pick the top 3, let's say nature, journaling, and
Brewing kombucha.
yeah, drink kombucha, yes. And noticing how good you feel, your health and your physical wellness and vitality is everything. So when you do that, you can begin to, the second part of the exercise is to begin to notice how great you feel. And this really ties in to the kombucha, and trust your gut really ties in. It's amazing. So we want to have you begin to notice how you feel in your physical body, and as well as charging your battery of your true essence of who you are. So it's important to know that when you make the big list of 10, then you narrow it down to 3 for this week. In order to make sure that those 3 happen, you're going to need to say no to some things that are not charging the battery, like computer and all these other, or people pleasing, or putting everyone else first. So I want to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think, myself included, especially with our smartphones that make us dumb, it's easy to get caught in scrolling loops. Just like, I mean, it can even happen with the Netflix. You can't decide what to watch. And so you're just infinitely scrolling for hours on end, just trying to find something that piques your interest. And so when we let go of the electronic stimulation in particular, because I mean, yes, we need to be connected. We need to know what's going on, but we don't need it 24/7. And there's other impacts, from the electromagnetic frequency radiation to the blue light that keeps you up later at night and impedes your sleep. So there's a lot of reasons to put down the phone, step away from the computer, and to re-engage in activities that human beings have engaged in since the dawn of time, which is, like you said, going out into nature, or getting introspective in journaling, brewing kombucha, which puts you in the activity and flow of the process, creatively thinking about, what flavors am I making, observing all the sort of, it's a very sensual process because you're engaging all the senses. And, but I think all of us, any of us, can get caught up in these, stuck places. But I agree. I think saying no is one of the most powerful ways to empower yourself. And it can feel uncomfortable at first because we are used to people pleasing. I don't know. Is it our culture? Is it what's expected of us as children? Where that comes from? It seems we all have it in some form or fashion. But letting go of trying to make other people feel good at the sacrifice of your own well-being is really a huge and revelatory step. And so I agree. I think putting that time on the calendar, making it sacred, is really that way. It's a way of just allowing yourself time with yourself.
Yeah, and then it's almost like you're getting to know a new friend because you have lost touch with this part of yourself. And it's so helpful when you charge that battery. So when you're making kombucha, it kind of brings some of attention from your physical, almost like your brain has to focus on the activity at hand. You're doing things with your hands, and it opens up space for some of the good ideas to come through. And that's what I refer to as your inner guidance. So you might have these very subtle impulses that say, while you're doing things and while you're drinking and being more aware of your body, which is huge, you can begin to notice the impulses that say, oh, I want to look into that. I want to research that, or I want to read that book, or I want to reach out to that friend. And those are the really important impulses to notice because they're gold. Don't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. And I think that those impulses can feel scary at first, especially if they're things that maybe you've always wanted to do and haven't given yourself permission to do, or maybe they're things that there's some trauma around. And so uncovering those layers is its own sort of excavation process. And, really that's for me with kombucha, well, sure, it's a beverage and it's healthy and it's good for my body. That has really been the biggest thing it has done for me, and why I consider it a bridge to holistic health is it has allowed me to sort of dive deeper and peeling the layers of that onion and trying to get more clarity around, toxins and poisons. They're not just physiological, they're emotional as well. And yet I also see that all of our sort of, when we release these, even as literal as like phlegm, right? These all become nutrients for your evolution. And what I mean by that is even when we die and our bodies go into the ground and we get broken down, we become nutrients in the soil for new life to grow. So using that metaphor, and same with the metaphor of fermentation, where we're breaking something down into smaller pieces, there's like a pre-digestion happening, but there's an enhancement of nutritional value, and it's allowing other organisms to flourish. And so even when we allow ourselves to go to those painful places, those places we've been hiding from, because often that's what's coming up in those subtle impulses, we examine that and give it its proper, what am I trying to say? When you look at something and you give it its proper due and its proper place, you don't just gloss it over or hide it or press it or, push it away, we're then able to allow that to become the fertilizer, if you will, for what's your next blossoming. Because we die a million times and we're reborn a million times. And I think coming into alignment with your soul's purpose is one of those really beautiful ways in which our blossom, our essence starts to really percolate up. But it can have this other period of adjustment, of letting other things go, of again, looking at the old bones and then reburying them properly and things like that.
I love that. And it reminds me of how, if we use the analogy of a cell phone, that your charge, your battery, if most people, unfortunately, I think are operating at a low charge, it's, everyone knows that you need to replenish and recharge your battery in order to help other people and to even be present to your own stuff that you want to work on that's surfacing. So it's the charging of the battery when you're really charged up, and even it seems simple, but doing these activities that really light you up is a huge way of charging that battery. And then you have more awareness too, like you said. And I want to talk about the small difference in my work that I talk about. It's like your intuition is a really good supportive feeling that says, this job is not fulfilling to me, and I really want to find something more fulfilling and make a difference. So let's just say that's your inner guidance saying to you. Now, if you keep stuffing that away and not listening, or you don't charge your battery and you put everyone else first, it's going to get louder and louder. And then it's going to feel very, very, very uncomfortable. So it's going to be stressful and overwhelming and everything. But if you begin to pay attention to that deep soul desire, then you can notice the inner critic that wants to jump in and say, who do you think you are to find, to really improve your health, or to find work that's meaningful and makes a difference, or to have a thriving, loving relationship, or live where you want to live, all the things. So there's always that inner critic voice that jumps in that wants to discount it, wants to just really protect you and keep you safe, but it's really not serving you, and we don't want that driving the car. So what I recommend, because a lot of people have that driving the car most of the
Right.
time. What I recommend is as we build the muscle and we start to hear our inner voice and we start to have that drive the car, we can then simply notice, oh, there's my I'm not good enough inner voice. But I'm not going to believe that. I'm not going to pay attention to it. I'm going to go back with my inner guidance that says, call so and follow that and go outside in nature and follow that and notice it's the feedback loop that you have in your channel too, in your challenge, where it's you continually notice the positive effects. And once you do that, you have your own personal validation and feedback loop. And then one other thing I want to say is, as opposed to the inner critic voice, there is trauma that can come up or deep human emotions. There's external stuff that we're not going to ignore. We're not just going to get in our lane and stay in our lane and ignore people. It's more about being more fully present with our charged battery so that when stuff does happen, we can handle it from patience and love and clarity as opposed to flying off the handle. So it really helps. So any human emotion that comes up, I believe, should be really felt in our body and worked on. And that's really helpful as opposed to the inner critic. We don't want to pay that much attention to that. So to me, there's a difference between those two.